Ronnie James Dio was in town playing. I turned around and Jeff Scott Soto and Marcello are there. And I've never been a crazy fan, but at that moment, I was.
Your home for melodic heavy metal. This is the Signals of Intuition.
There's brand new Sunstorm right there, the lead-off single from their new album Afterlife. That track was Swan Song. You're listening to the Signals of Intuition, your home for melodic hard rock and heavy metal. And tonight on the show, we have the keyboard player and main songwriter and producer of that band, Mr. Alessandro Del Vecchio. You may know Alessandro from a number of other bands if you're into melodic rock, and if you know Frontiers Records at all, his name is one that will immediately come to mind with all of the bands he's done, especially over the past decade or so. He's worked with everybody from Hardline, Sunstorm, with many musicians such as Dean Castronovo, Tommy Hart from Fair Warning, and countless others. It's very worth going looking up his discography as it's quite extensive. So let's get Alessandro on the line right now. Hey, Alessandro, how's it going? It's Brandon.
Sorry for, the other interview went a little longer, so, but I'm here. Ciao.
Yeah, I've done that many times myself, so it's all good.
Yeah, don't worry. And we don't have an interview after you, so.
Oh, okay, fantastic. So when I do these, I'd like to start at the beginning of you as a musician and then work our way up to the new album. So I guess sort of starting at the beginning, where did you grow up and how did you get started in music?
Well, I grew up in northern Italy, very close to Milano, and I've been raised by my parents always with a record playing as a soundtrack for our days. So my first memories are always linked to us listening to a record. It could have been Jimi Hendrix or the Beatles or Uriah Heep or Genesis. And the funny story is that when I was 5, my favorite band was Genesis, and was the album called Selling England by the Pound. So I guess my parents did a great job on raising me on the right stuff. So when my teenage years came, the first time I heard Queen, and specifically the song Bohemian Rhapsody, I just saw the light. Everything was different after that, because I heard something from from a different dimension and a different space. It wasn't like I was hearing, the bands that that I was already listening. So something changed, something clicked. And it made me say to my father that night, "Oh, Papa, I want to be a musician. I want to be like Freddie Mercury. I want to sing, I want to play, and I want to write songs that can do the same effect that I had today." And he was like, "Well, that's a good purpose for the future." And then, he bought me my first keyboard, and then straight on with local bands. And then my name started to go out. I signed my first deal when I was 16. And that's how I grew up.
That's crazy, signing your first deal at 16. That wasn't with Edge of Forever, was it?
No, it wasn't Edge of Forever. It was partly Edge of Forever, but it was a band called Madrigal, which back then we were signed to a label that was all somehow linked to the first Dream Theater fan club, and we were playing prog metal. And we started when we were 15, and we're basically, it's crazy because I don't even know how we could play that music, because I couldn't play those songs today. It was so technical that everybody was talking about us in Italy. So we signed our first deal, and we started to play, and we started to tour locally, but we were just kids. And but then that band evolved into another band called Fear and Grace, and I did the last album with them probably in 2002. And Matteo Carnio and Christian Grillo from Fear and Grace and Madrigal became band members with me in Edge of Forever. So that's how Edge of Forever started. But before Edge of Forever, I never had like an international deal of some, of a bigger capacity. Even if right before Edge of Forever, I was with Time Machine. I don't know if you know that band, but in Italy it was probably the biggest prog metal band so big that we had Andre Matos as a singer for a tour from
Right. Yep. I know of the band. I may have heard a couple songs in the past, but if I have, it's been a while. But I've definitely heard of them.
Yeah, but my baptism of fire in terms of getting to the Champions League of musicians was Time Machine touring with Andre Matos when I was 23, 24.
That's unbelievable to think that even at that age, I mean, by then you'd already had all this experience touring Italy. It seems so funny to go from, like you say, that highly technical music, almost Dream Theater-esque, to Edge of Forever, which is definitely, much more like in the Sunstorm kind of vein, and more that you've become known for ever since. So how does Edge of Forever form then from that?
Yeah, so Edge of Forever, I always loved melodic rock. So I was always writing side songs, that genre, but they were too soft for Fear and Grace or for my prog metal adventures. And I wanted to write something more, more like the commercial Malmsteen, Talisman, and that kind of music. And then one day, it's crazy because I met Jeff Scott Soto and Marcel Jacobs in Italy. They were recording an album, and Ronnie James Dio was in town playing. Nobody knew that Jeff Scott Soto, I mean, it's not like social media nowadays that you know where the artists are and recording. So out of the blue, I'm in this venue and I turn around and Jeff Scott Soto and Marcel are there. And I've never been a crazy fan, but at that moment, I was like, oh my God, I should give them a demo. It's never going to happen anymore. So I got back to my car, grabbed the CD, and went to them and just said, well, I know you probably get so many CDs that you might use it to take away the eyes from your window, but maybe you're gonna like it. And they were like, well, we're even more surprised that somebody is recognizing us in this audience, because nobody realized that. I mean, it's so unique as an event to have Jeff Scott Soto in Italy, hanging around at a bar, that nobody realized. So we chatted a little bit and I left them the CD, and then I guess a week later, Marcel wrote me and he was, well, I wasn't expecting something so good. If you guys are looking for a producer, I would like to help you out and, kind of mentoring you on your first album. And we already signed our deal with MTN Music back then. So we just, we said, oh, that's even a better occasion to come out with, a great debut, to be produced by such a household name for the genre. And that's how Edge of Forever basically started. And then I didn't feel motivated to do prog metal anymore because the band wanted to go to a more darker side, and I wanted to go to a more melodic, side of things. So we just went separate ways, and then Edge of Forever became my thing.
Oh, okay. And so it's kind of from there that everything builds up then. So how do you go from, you did Edge of Forever, how does that slowly build up over time into you eventually working with Frontiers and doing all the projects that you're known for today?
Well, basically, when I was with MTN Music, Frontiers was distributing MTN Music in Italy, so we were always in touch. Somehow, the second album, Frontiers made an offer back then for the second album for Let the Demon Rock and Roll, but we stayed with MTM. So through the years, we were always in touch. And then in 2010, I worked on the Lionville debut, which was distributed by Frontiers. And one day, for the second time in my life, the first one was with Marcel and Jeff. For the second time was with Frontiers. I just challenged my destiny. I'm never chasing work, and I'm never chasing anything. Everything, in my opinion, kinda has to come to you. You gotta do the right thing. You gotta be on your path, on your mission. If you do good, things will eventually come. But that day I was like, they're distributing my records. They're praising my records. Why haven't I done anything with them till now. So I basically wrote Elio from Frontiers and said, well, I don't know, Elio, maybe do you need songs or do you need a producer? Maybe, you're trying to expand, because I knew that they were working with Dennis Ward and Eric Martinson back then a lot. And I didn't want to step over anybody. And Elio simply wrote me back and said, do you have songs that could work for Robbie LeBlanc and Find Me? And I was like, well, no, but maybe I could write a song and send it to you. So the day after, I sent them a song, and they were like, oh, that's good, send another one. So I sent another one, and that went on for a week, and I sent, I guess, 6-7 songs. And then after writing those songs for Robbie LeBlanc, I get an email from Serafino, and it goes like, well, Ale, I really like what you're doing, especially in such a short time. How can you do that? Would you like to work with Johnny Gioeli? And I was like, no, this is not happening to me. A week ago, I just sent an email seeing and touching base if they needed songs, and now they're asking me to produce Johnny Gioeli. And then that turned, I sent Fever Dreams to Johnny and Serafino, and they were like, well, maybe we should, somehow resurrect a Hardline and put Johnny and you together and work on it so that you can do something that's going to benefit the band and maybe create something for the future of the band. And here we are. We just finished our, I guess, 5th album together with Hardline. So, I mean, it's kind of a funny story, but also a lesson to learn for those who feel they shouldn't dare, but they know that they have the qualities. Well, once in a while, you should challenge your destiny or plant a seed to check your values, because sometimes we're just intimidated. But, if you're strong and you know that you're kind of honest towards your talents, you can, still write to a bigger entity and challenge your destiny. And it proved me wrong, because that day I was a little battled. I was like, I don't know if I should do this, if I should do that. And but still today, those 2 actions that I took with Jeff and Marcel and Frontiers completely changed my life.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's funny, just to step back, just before Hardline, the place that I first became aware of you, I had heard Edge of Forever, but I didn't know anything about the members or anything like that. But the place where I went, I got to check this guy out, was Eden's Curse. How did you become involved with them for the Trinity album?
Well, so I knew Eden's Curse because, they had a big buzz out when the debut came out. And I checked them, and I was like, wow, that's pretty cool stuff. But I was never into, the band as a fan, I would say that, but I really enjoyed and liked what they were doing. One day I got an email from my friend Karsten Lizerschultz, and Karsti has been my pusher for years.
He's a great musician.
Yeah. He's a great singer, great writer, and a really great human being. He's a giver. He shares all he knows, all he has. He doesn't keep anything for himself. And he was like, yeah, there's a band I'm writing with named Eden's Curse. They're looking for a keyboard player that can sing and can write, and I think you're the right guy. And I was like, oh, that's totally amazing. I mean, they were already touring. They were on the way up, but they were already established. And I sent out an email, and Paul wrote me an email back saying, well, we have a song. Would you like to finish writing on it? And so my audition was basically writing a song. And that's crazy because, you assume you're in for your keyboard or musical abilities, but I was basically called for my songwriting more than anything else. Yeah, and then the first song we wrote was No Holy Man, that had James LaBrie from Dream Theater singing on. So that's pretty as a start with the band. It's been 3-4 amazing years. Then we went separate ways, but we stayed friends. We toured together. We love each other. And just last week, Eden's Curse celebrated 10 years of Trinity. So, yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Well, it's funny because 10 years ago, I discovered, I knew the band from the debut and they kind of fell off my radar. And then No Holy Man came out because a friend of mine's a huge Dream Theater fan. I checked it out, went, okay, this is cool. Very Queensryche meets Dream Theater. Awesome. And so I found a live video of you guys playing it. And how I became aware of you was hearing your just crazy vocals singing James LaBrie's part, the Let He Without Sin pre-chorus part. And I was like, who the heck is this guy? What a great voice. So that was where I started to look into you and discovered you'd done Lionville and, that's the Edge of Forever guy. And, it kind of took off from there. So that's really where I became aware of you as a musician, was from that live video.
Wow, that's very cool. First of all, because I wrote that line. So basically, I was James. I don't want to sound, too full of myself, but James basically sang what I did on the demo. So to sing it live was very natural. And it was also very fun because when we were starting the song every night, people were like, so who's going to do James's parts? And so when I was doing that, everybody was like, you got the secret guy there behind the keyboards. And but it was one of my most favorite moments playing live with Eden's Curse for sure.
Yeah, because I watched a few other videos and you did backing, I think, for most of them. But that was sort of like the moment where it's like, wow, okay. Just wondering if we can touch on a couple other projects. It's funny, I was looking through my CD collection. I'm like, geez, I own a lot of the stuff you've done through the years. One of my more recent favorites was the Key of Hearts album. Tell me about this. Was this something you were approached? Did you already have the songs together? Did you sit down and write this with Tommy and Kee, or how did that project come together?
Well, I wrote most of the stuff by the time they got involved because we wanted to do something with Tommy, and then Kee basically jumped on board, like a tagline time. He was doing records with Frontiers, solo records with Frontiers. So we were like, we should get Kee to play these songs, and it's gonna have Kee's trademark all over it. By simply a record with Tommy Hart, it then became, something that they liked to do even more together. Yeah, it was a great experience to be with them because, first time I heard Tommy was on a Uli John Roth album, and he was singing this English version of an Italian aria. So I was like, oh man, this voice. And then I was like, oh, that's Tommy Hart. And I already had the Fair Warning records. So to be able to be with them was really great. And Kee, freaking amazing player. I think he played everything. He recorded everything that you hear on the album probably in 2 days, which is something that's pretty impressive.
That's crazy. For a guitar player, yeah.
Yeah, especially with the quality and the delivery that Kee recorded on that record, which in my opinion is probably the best record that Kee has done guitar-wise after Prisoners in Paradise, in my opinion.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. I think that band really melded everything I loved about his two albums. I think it's just two, right? Well, the two late 80s, early 90s albums he did anyways with Europe, mixing it with Fair Warning. I thought that was just a perfect mesh of those two musicians and how that came together.
Yeah. That, it's almost impossible not to make it sound like Europe and Fair Warning, because Fair Warning, basically the trademark were those vocals and, those amazingly crafted, high-pitched, passionate, soulful vocals. And Europe's trademark on those two records were those incredibly melodic solos that Kee was doing. So, if you think of songs like Superstition or, I don't know, Open Your Heart, you can still whistle the old solos It's crazy. It's so melodic, so cool, so unique. So when we worked together, I really pushed the envelope on getting that trademark there, because as a fan of those two guys, I wanted to hear that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it turned out absolutely killer. Another one that I don't know how well praised this album was, but it might honestly be my favorite thing you've done to date was the Love Killers album with Tony Harnell a couple years ago. That album, I think, it's certainly not a TNT clone, but it's, to me, being such a big fan of, TNT, I think it might be the closest thing he's done in 25 years to TNT while still being original.
Yeah.
And still not being a copy of that band.
Yeah, I didn't want to write a copycat of TNT. First of all, because I'm not Ronnie Letecro, but I'm a huge fan of Tony's vocals. So I wrote with Tony in mind. I wanted to make a special record with him. Unfortunately, I think it just went under the radar somehow, because it's a great record and the vocals are to die for. So, honestly, one of the best vocal performances that I've produced in my life. Some of the ballads have such a great vocal delivery. And Tony's Tony. Great writer, great, exceptional singer, unique. There's no other Tony Harnell. It's crazy. I mean, so unique. The delivery on the whole record is just amazing. But even, by the band, you have these kind of different guitar licks that you have from Gianluca Ferro, who he was called because he was a different player than the rest of the melodic rock army. And, sometimes, with such a great output of records, not everything clicks at the right time. Maybe it's a record that will be rediscovered in a few years, or if we're able to do a second Love Killers album, we will be able to establish the name a little bit out there, a little bit more. But yes, I agree with you. It's, in my opinion, one of Tony's best albums after TNT, for sure. It's different, but it can stand close to the Westworld albums and anything is done after TNT.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's a perfect mix, really, between those two. Is probably a bit newer TNT meets Westworld.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about recording. Obviously, you do a lot of recording and mixing work. How did you get started doing audio engineering? Like, did you go to school for it, or are you entirely self-taught?
Well, I'm entirely self-taught, but I happened to have my father wanted to, when I started to play with bands, my father, as a lover of music and as a supporter of what I wanted to do, he found a way to be with me. So he had a passion for hi-fi and sounds and electronics. So he became our sound engineer. And through the years, he became a very established sound engineer for live events. And so working with him for my shows and for his shows that he was contacted for, basically gave me a little insight on how sound and the physics of sound work. So when I was probably 15 or so, I asked him if he could help me buy a multi-track cassette recorder so that I could do my demos. I had mixers in our garage, so I just asked him if he could give me a 24-channel mixer so that I could record my drummer and my band. And that's how I started as a sound engineer, recording on a tape recorder. But then when I was probably 17 or so, when we first went to in a real studio, I loved the sound engineer's work and duty. I was like, I want to do that too. It's so cool. And I was like, well, it would be so cool to produce my albums and be able to get to that special place where you don't need too many people involved to accomplish your vision. Because I was a fan of Paul McCartney and Queen and Mike Oldfield. I mean, all these people that could somehow produce themselves because they knew how to do it. And then the bigger factor was that in Italy, melodic rock was totally unknown to sound engineers. So you couldn't have a producer in Italy to do a melodic rock record that could compete with the big guns like Toto, like Journey, and or at least be in that ballpark. So I was forced to start producing because I couldn't get the sound I wanted, and I started to experiment and to work with sounds and microphones, and then my parents bought me my first computer for audio with Logic, and I think it was Logic 4 or 3. That's a long time ago. And my bedroom basically became a studio, a recording studio. And when I was probably, 23 or 22, I was also teaching in my bedroom. But my bedroom had the bed was the element that you probably didn't even see in the room, because everything was keyboards, guitars, cables, microphones, and this big 24 channels mixer. And then in 2005, I guess, I was touring with a very known local band. We were doing 120 shows a year. So we were touring a lot, but we were doing covers. We were doing basically, classic top 40 rock. And I got annoyed of playing covers because I wanted to write my own stuff and create. So I had to decide to do something that could give me the time and also the finances to do my own music. I started to work as a sound engineer for a local business that was doing live events. And my baptism of fire was being the stage engineer, sound engineer for a festival, a sort of Monsters of Rock festival that we had over here. The lineup was crazy. It was Dio, Candlemass, Gothard, Axel Rudy Pale, Rage, so many great bands. And I was like, okay, I like to do this. And then a studio was looking for a sound engineer. I just called them and I was like, well, I'm a bedroom sound engineer for studio recordings because this is not where I cut my teeth in, but maybe I can come there. You like what I do. And I went there and they hired me for 5 years. Basically, I worked there and they had all the SSL consoles, and that's really where I was able on a daily basis to work as a sound engineer and to learn in a great studio. And then in 2010 or 9, I was like, maybe I gotta move on my own thing and be able to do this, but not for anybody that's ringing the bell. I want to direct my whatever talent that I have for sound to the genre I love and to the music I love. So basically, out of the blue, I was there on the market as a producer, and and bands, they liked what I was doing, especially after Edge of Forever. Everybody in my area started to recognize some talent in me because I was the first one to travel to the US, get a major deal, get everything paid by the record company to fly to the US, record your album, and come back. Probably only Lacuna Coil back then from Italy were able to sign a deal with an international label and be able to fly to the US and experience something like that. So when I came back, bands started to ask me advices or to write for them or to record them. So that's how I started to produce Shiny Line first and then Lionville, simply because, they knew me for Edge of Forever and also for Moonstone Project, which was a project with Ian Pace, Glenn Hughes, Carmina Peace, Paul Shortino, and so many, many, many others.
Right. That was something it's another question. Yeah.
Yeah. And, but basically, a friend of mine in 2004, I guess, that I met at a Jeff Scott Soto live show, she told me, she was like, oh, you're the Edge of Forever guy. I have a friend of mine who's putting up a project that's very ambitious. And I think if you guys pair up, it's going to be amazing. And I was like, who's this crazy guy trying to get Ian Pace and Glenn Hughes after 30 years together on an album. That's how I met Filippini. So basically before 2010, I already was kind of the rock kid in town because of Edge of Forever, Moonstone Project, and that's how I started to work with Lionville and Shining Line and get my name out there in the melodic rock world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's very organic, just sort of one thing after another just gradually builds up and up and up to where you've got this reputation to where Frontiers goes, okay, this is the guy. What system are you currently running for recording? Using Pro Tools? Or are you still on Logic or something else?
I'm still on Logic. I'm a Logic guy. I love Logic. I grew up through Logic, so it's still my DAW to go to, but I know Pro Tools very well and I use Pro Tools very well and very often because obviously Pro Tools is more universal. So basically we get sessions that are always in Pro Tools, and some of the features are better on Pro Tools than any other software. So we have Pro Tools, but I'm not a fan of Pro Tools. And but basically, the DAW is just a tool. It's features and tools that you use to kind of translate what you have in your ears. So it can either be Sonar or Cakewalk or anything. I mean, if it works, if you're able to translate whatever you hear in the outer space, and you're able to translate it into this dimension through sound, that's totally fine.
Yeah, and that's it too, is each workflow is going to get you a slightly different result. I mean, I don't know if you've ever used Harrison Mix Bus. Have you ever heard of that?
Yeah, I used the first version. I was
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, as soon as it came out, I was like, oh, that's pretty insane. And I used it for something like 2 years, but then I got an analog board for the studio, so I was like, okay, I can do that in the real world. And to me, it never became easier to work in Harrison Mix Bus if you had to run another machine basically as a tape machine into the other software to mix. And it wasn't too organic for me, but it sounded, and I guess it sounds even better now with the evolution of things. But, I guess every sound engineer chooses a platform and exploits everything that's in that software in order to get to a result. So, I mean, if you talk to a Pro Tools guy, they're always bashing Logic, vice versa. And, I don't like Cubase. I'm not able to use Cubase. And so I bash Cubase. But, if Dennis Ward is one of the best sound engineers and producers that we have out there and is using Cubase. So there's a reason behind it. Most of the times it's because it's the software that you grew up with and you exploited and explored the most. So, I mean, I know every little angle and shortcut and the way Logic works. And to do the same thing on another software, it would take me probably too much time to just get to another flow and to another workflow, basically. So, I don't want to say that I'm set with Logic, but I really love it.
Yeah, that's the thing. It helps to know other platforms, but what you know best is what you're always going to go back to. It's funny because on that note, we were talking about Harrison, and it being a tool. I look at a friend of mine, he tried it out and he said, I mixed it in a completely different way than I would have mixed it and got a totally different sound doing the same thing with the same plugins, but just using that different software in a different way. It's like going, from a mouse and a keyboard to a real board in front of you. You can set all the levels the same. It's not going to come out quite the same just based on how you're interacting with it.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. I mean, the great thing about audio, even if you share your knowledge, which I'm never afraid of, anything with the same tool, anything can sound different just because the human factor is incredible. I mean, whatever sample I have, if I give it to you, it will sound different because, my ears are unique and your ears are unique. And what I want to hear and the way I get to the result, it's going to be always different than anybody else doing the same job. It's like, mixing the same song. And it happened to me. Maybe musicians were testing producers and mixing engineers. And, basically my sound was always different, even if We were all working with the same console in the same studio and trying to get to the same results, but still it sounded different. So that's a great thing about audio.
Yeah, no, very true. Like you say, the human factor is really everything. Okay, so let's take a look now at the brand new Sunstorm album, Afterlife. It's funny, you're the second member of the band I've interviewed in the past year. Simone was in the fall, but I don't think we got to talk much about Sunstorm. So tell me originally, how did you become involved with the band?
So I worked with Lynn Turner on the band Rated X with him and Carmine Peace and Tony Franklin. And I mean, that record was kind of a struggle to finish because there were like clashes through the members. And, you know, sometimes when you get too many cooks in the kitchen, it's impossible to even make the easiest dish. But it was a great experience because I was working with them, and we stayed in touch and we became friends. I already toured with Carmine as a singer, so we were friends, but I never worked with Joe. And basically, Joe liked what I did, even if at the end that was an album that never made anybody happy. So it was a great compromise in all parts involved. But then after, I guess, 2 years, he wanted to do another Sunstorm album and wanted to change what he was doing with Sunstorm and get to a more hard rock direction, still melodic, but more straight in your face kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So I was asked to write the songs for the album, and I was like, I should pair with another great writer. And I instantly thought of Simone, because Simone is my favorite producer in Italy and songwriter, and VGM to me are the best band that ever came out of the metal rock world in Italy. So I got in touch with Simone and I was like, well, Simone, maybe it's time to do this. You're a big Lynn Turner fan. I'm a big Lynn Turner fan. Maybe, we're going to have fun and do this. And, I basically communicated to Frontiers and Joe that I wanted to do the album with Simone. And we started to write songs. Then we did another record with Sunstorm. The Edge of Tomorrow album worked very well. Still one of the most played videos that Frontiers ever had. So, I mean, that's basically how I got in the Lynn Turner world and then into the Sunstorm world. And here we are today.
Yeah, I know for this album, Joe stepped away from the band, just kind of saying he wanted a change in general of direction and wanted to try something new, and you've carried on now with it with some of the other members. How did you get Ronnie Romero into the band?
Well, starting from the fact that we wanted to move on, we needed a singer with some sort of pedigree into our world, our genre. We still wanted that rainbow melodic connection. So Ronnie was almost a very natural choice that I didn't take. I gotta give kudos to Serafino Perugino from Tears, because he sent me a text saying, well, I have the right guy for Sunstorm. Why don't we polish everything, make it younger, make it fresher, and get Ronnie Romero? And I was like, yes, let's get to work. Let's write the songs. So basically we chose Ronnie because he's got a household name in the genre, but is still a new face, still a new kid in town. So we could sound fresher, we could sound more up to date, and we could explore new territories, but still retaining that melodic side to it. And I guess the choice proved us right.
Mm-hmm. When it comes to writing, like you've got both yourself and Simone, both accomplished songwriters and producers doing this kind of music. Is it written entirely by you? Do you and him do a lot of collaboration when it comes to the writing?
Well, we basically, when Simone and I write, I just let him do the music and do the foundation of it. Then I lay keyboards on top of that and write melodies and write lyrics to the music that Simone writes. So basically, songs like Afterlife, Swan Song, Stronger, are songs that I get music for, and I write the melody for it. Then for the other songs, Like Lost Forever is a song that I wrote on my own, and other songs I wrote with other writers like Soren Kronqvist and Daniel Palmqvist, who wrote on all the Sunstorm albums. And even when I wasn't there yet, they were still writing few songs, and I still wanted to have that sort of trademark from the past albums. So I called Soren, and then I got a new songwriter from the band Infinite and Divine. His name is Ian Atkinson, and we wrote a song. And then I got the song that I wrote with Doug Aldrich, I Found a Way. But basically, besides Lost Forever, all the songs were like, the music first and then the melody. And then we put up everything together.
Oh, that's very cool. So you've mentioned there's a new Hardline in the pipes. We just had Sunstorm out. Is there anything else you can talk about that's coming up for yourself? Might we hear another Edge of Forever album, for example?
Well, yeah, there's an Edge of Forever for the fall.
Oh, it's coming out. Awesome.
Yeah. We already started recording, but we're finished writing the lyrics and melodies this week. And we're recording bass and guitars. And it's due before the end of the year. So, yes, it's called Seminole. And it's an evolution of Native Soul. It's got a big mini opus at the end of the album. It's a 12-minute song that really goes wide into the Kansas world that I love. Yeah, and it's a little more, I don't want to say darker, but a little more riff-based and a little more straight to the point. The songs are hookier and deeper, so I'm very excited to be working on it. Then I'm very, very happy about Robbie McCauley's solo record that's coming out in May called Standing on the Edge, which is a record that I'm very proud and humbled to be part of. And then there's a new Yorn coming out probably beginning of next year. And then we have this band with Michael Sweet, Nathan James, Joel Oakstra, Tommy Aldridge, and Marco Mendoza that were writing songs in the moment right now. So that's pretty exciting. And then I have this band called Skills with Billy Sheehan, David Huff, Renan Zonta, and Brett Gillis. So I got so many great albums in the pipeline. It's incredible. I'm so grateful that I can even mention these names in bands and albums that I'm working with.
For sure. No, it's unbelievable. You think of, the people you've worked with over your entire career. It's unbelievable to see all these people that you bring together, that you're able to do albums with, write with, and it's you're definitely living the melodic rock dream, that's for sure, in a sense.
Yeah, that's sure. Yes, I'm very grateful to be doing that.
Well, Alessandro, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out to do this. And, if we had more time, I would have loved to have picked your brain. I mean, there's so many bands that I'm just, I'm like, there's Fergie Fredrickson, Silent Force, Issa, like it just goes on and on. So hopefully we can do this again and touch on some of the other stuff. But I want to thank you very much for the time and some of these great stories.
You're very welcome. And maybe by October, November, when Hardline and Edge of Forever are going to be out, we can do another one so that we can touch base on more topics and discuss way more into the other records too.
That sounds perfect. Much appreciated. Best of luck with the new Sunstorm and all the other stuff you've got coming up. I'm looking forward to everything you've mentioned, so can't wait to hear it all when it gets released.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you for the support, and I'll speak to you very soon.
All right. Thanks so much, Alessandro. Have a good one.
Ciao. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Ciao.